Welcome back to ATRE. Today I'm here joined by Verity Cubitt, Senior Director at Living Valuations at CBRE. So firstly, welcome onto the channel.
Thanks for having me.
So Verity, you took a bit more of a traditional per se route into the industry. So you studied at Nottingham Trent University.
That's correct, yeah. I did an undergrad in real estate.
But then you done a sandwich year, which is a little bit different. So at Reading, we are more pushed into internships. But since speaking to someone over at Colliers, they said that sandwich year may be a great route into the industry because you learn so much. So who was your sandwich year with?
Yeah, so actually my sandwich year was with Colliers International. I really thought that year in industry would firstly help me ground what I'd learned at university in practical application, kind of probably give me a little bit more impetus on that final year to really kind of knuckle down and do the best I could possibly do. But I also thought it would be invaluable when applying for jobs post-graduation, just to have that kind of full year under my belt. So yeah, that's what really attracted me to sandwich year. Unfortunately, the global financial crisis did rather hit and kind of scupper chances somewhat.
Right.
So my sandwich year was between 2008 and 2009. And just finding those companies that were willing to take on a sandwich student for a year when they're making all sorts of cuts across the business. It was really challenging and it was really hard, but I was very lucky to be able to secure one at Colliers in Birmingham.
So what departments were you in at the time? Was it like a rotational side of things?
No, so I was based completely in one team for the whole year. So that team was a licence and leisure team at Colliers, so specialising in kind of pubs and leisure. And predominantly my role was an incredibly glamorous one of selling and leasing vacant pubs and bars. So I've definitely been around some choice venues. And I have to say, what is quite shocking, particularly when you're kind of fresh-faced from university, is going around some of these public houses where the tenant at will has just departed and left kind of the entirety of their lives behind, including a fridge full of rotting food and milk to go around. You definitely kind of grow some strength in your constitution to put up with some of the smells that you see in some of these public houses. But look, it was great experience, and I had a lot of autonomy, doing a lot of the viewings myself, the negotiations as well.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a fantastic year of experience. But yeah, definitely not glamorous in any way, shape, or form.
So you then went back to Trent and studied your final year?
Yeah, that's correct. So final year, which is the fourth year.
Nice.
And it was very nice because I had lots of friends that were on my course that had also done various sandwich years across various companies. So I had someone at McDonald's, someone at Domino's Pizza, others at kind of smaller real estate practices. So a full mixed bag. But yeah, we all went back and then finished our final year. And
then you graduated, and how was your experience finding a job after that?
Yeah. Again, it was quite challenging. Like all graduates do, I put in an awful lot of applications. I had one offer to go and interview, and that was at Allsop in London. So I did 2 interviews at Allsop, and that was my only interview process that I got through to. But I was lucky enough to receive an offer.
So then was that more of a rotational thing? Was it a classic?
Yeah, it was a classic kind of 4 6-month rotations. But I was quite fortunate in that my year in industry had counted towards my APC. So that sandwich year counted 12 months. So actually, rather than do a full 2 years on the Allsop grad scheme, I actually ended up sitting after 18 months.
Nice.
And then ended up post-qualification kind of sitting in a final team for 6 months, just to get a bit more experience and support them in a slightly different space.
And what was that best thing that you learned during the grad scheme?
Ooh, the best thing. I mean, I think it's fair to say, and it's still the same now, there's a lot of same people there still at Allsop. It's a very much a kind of work hard, play hard mentality. Had some fabulous away days. We'd often go on the Eurostar to Antwerp in Belgium for an away day, and they still do abroad away days, so they have a good time. But this is a career. It's not, if you really want to progress within the real estate space, it's not really a 9 to 5. And I think I learned that very much early on. So, for example, when Allstop are holding an auction, you're expected to be at the office for 6, half 6, because you need to be moving the brochures, you need to be getting the venue ready for that auction to take place. And then you don't finish, you go out for dinner post-auction, but, you're there with the team probably at the auction house until about 9 p.m.
Wow.
And this was at a time when most of the auctions were kind of done in person. There's a lot more virtual now. But yeah, they're long days.
Really?
So I think that's probably something that I learned early on is really, if you want to succeed, you need to be doing more than the minimum contracted hours.
What was the difference between working in Birmingham and then London? Was it a different market, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it is a different market.
Yeah.
But I think, it's quite nice to have worked both. And I think probably working out of London now with regional colleagues, it gives me good perspective on that relationship and how best to work together. Birmingham's great in that because the market is smaller, there's a couple of pubs and bars. So you can guarantee if you go for a drink on a Thursday, because it's definitely a Thursday now, Friday obviously is quieter.
Yeah.
If you go for a drink on a Thursday, if you go to a couple of the bars within Birmingham, you can guarantee you're going to see not only clients, you'll probably bump into competitors as well. But it's really nice to kind of know that actually there's that opportunity and that serendipity to just bump into clients. Obviously London is that much larger. The chances of that happening, and they do happen, are a bit smaller.
Okay.
But, London, there is so much going on,
and
there's so many opportunities to kind of engage with different clients.
And now you've worked your way up to a senior director. Are you still quite hands-on with your work?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not writing reports day in, day out like I was. And actually, to be honest, a lot of the team, that way of working is changing with AI coming in. So it's really interesting to see kind of how everyone's working patterns are changing. But in terms of kind of reviewing numbers and being across numbers, very much part of my day-to-day. I'm having a lot of client engagement. So obviously it's important for me to kind of be across everything that's happening in the transactional market and what we're seeing. And in terms of inspections and going and seeing assets, again, very much what we do. So I'm off to go and see some Zone 1 Central BTR tomorrow. So that'll be really interesting, really chunky, big scheme. So yeah, very much kind of still somewhat in the weeds of it.
Are you out the office quite a lot? Is it quite a, I suppose, mobile career?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, often, heading across to the city to go and meet lending clients. I mean, we're quite lucky today. I've got 2 different meetings with lending clients, and both of them are coming over to the West End, which is great.
Nice.
But yeah, very much kind of here, there and everywhere, as I said. And across the UK for various relationship meetings and inspections.
I'm going to pick up what you said about AI. So how are you using that in your work recently? Is it quite a big part of what you do yet, or is everyone still sort of getting used to it?
Yeah, look, it does factor in. We are very much upskilling in the space and seeing what we can do and how we can improve our working patterns and efficiencies by utilising AI. At the moment, it tends to kind of almost be a bit of a show and tell exercise. So we'll go away, we'll have a play, we'll see what works, what prompts we can use, how we can utilise it, and then we'll come back together as a key team and kind of share our findings so that everyone can kind of benefit or refine those findings. We're very much using it, but it is very, is learning curve.
Yeah, of course. I think, well, especially with university, it's not pushed too much, and people are saying in the future, students are going to be using it a lot more in the work, and that's when we'll, I suppose, see a big change in the operation side of things. I'm not sure if it's going to be heavily reliant on AI, because I still think at the core of this industry it's very meeting people, but it would definitely make workflow more efficient. So probably 80% of the people that watch these videos are grads and early careers. These people are maybe looking at what sectors that they want to go down. So what should they expect if they go into a valuations team at a firm?
Yeah, I mean, it tends to be quite varied as a role, which I think really appeals to people. So there'll be a mixture of tasks. I think the perception is that you're going to be spending all day doing comps. So calling up agents or gathering comparable evidence to justify pricing. That's not the case. That does factor in. There is an element of that. It is really important whenever we're doing evaluation to be able to corroborate it with evidence. So yes, that does form an element of it. But you will also be going out and inspecting assets with a qualified surveyor. So you'll be out and about, which is fantastic, going and seeing the product that you're valuing. You will be attending seminars with clients. You might be attending small client meetings, or you might be attending large presentations. You will be joining calls with clients. So I have a bit of a general rule on my client calls that if you're joining one, you have to contribute.
Nice.
So I think it's really important, kind of sooner rather than later, that people get comfortable presenting to clients on calls around numbers or around the market. So yeah, I expect people to kind of be prepped, ready to go in terms of what they're going to cover. But that's a kind of bit of a flavour in terms of what an average day would look like as a valuation graduate.
So
and writing reports. I should have probably put that in as well. So yeah, running numbers on assets. So in terms of living vals, we tend to do quite a lot on Excel models, our own Excel models.
Okay.
But that could also be kind of on Argus Enterprise or other valuation software. So running numbers and then also writing reports.
Do you expect grads to have sort of understanding of Excel on how to use it, or is that something that you teach as well?
No, I think more and more now, financial literacy and Excel literacy is incredibly important. You will actually see now for a lot of graduate roles that they will have Excel-based tests form part of their recruitment process.
Really?
Yeah. So it's definitely something to start watching YouTube videos on. If you're not hugely familiar with Excel, really upskill in that space, because even if you don't have an Excel test, it will be invaluable in life going forward. So I would definitely say it's worth spending some time over the summer to get familiar with Excel.
I assume you've had grads in for internships or in your team. What are some of the traits that have stood out to you about the best grads that have sort of excelled the most?
I think this is very personal to different people that will work with graduates. But I think the overarching theme is somebody that is willing, somebody that's keen and engaged, and somebody that works hard and asks questions. I think if you're given the opportunity to kind of secure an internship, it's really important that you make the effort to try and speak to as many people as possible. Make sure that they know you, because when it comes to graduate recruitment, you ideally want to skip the first stage interviews at that place. You want to impress, and the more you get to know the team that you're sat in and the individuals, the more likely that is to be the case. Because you might just be working with one person in isolation for the 4 weeks or similar, but really get to know as many people as you can across the team. That's really worthwhile. But yeah, just somebody that really kind of knuckles down. Sometimes you won't be given a glamorous task. Okay, a lot of the time it isn't. But really give it your all. Despite that.
So that then brings me on to the question of: would you recommend a grad or student does an internship or that sandwich year?
I think it's probably a little bit unfair for me to ask because I have an element of bias on this.
Yeah.
Look, it worked for me to have that year in industry, and I think it looks fantastic on a CV to have had that full year. Internships are incredibly competitive, so if you can get one, then that's fantastic. But I think there is probably a difference between being somewhere for 4 weeks and being somewhere for a year.
Yeah.
And in terms of what you can really garner from that experience. But look, I think either is worthwhile and either is definitely worth having. And I think lots of the universities don't offer that sandwich year. So if you really want to go to, Reading, which is a fantastic institution, and I think it's considered effectively to be the best in the UK still for real estate, then by all means do it and see what you can get in terms of internships during the summer.
But you've always been in sort of bigger size companies. I understand all sort of may have not been as big as CBRE and Savills, but what stood out to you about the bigger firms?
I don't know if it's necessarily been like an active choice for me, but I think to be at larger firms, I think it's probably where opportunities have arisen. I would say from a valuation perspective, the assets that you're able to value at those larger firms are bigger, shinier, higher value, which, particularly in the area where I specialise, PBSA, BTR, you need to be at those larger firms in order to get those large chunky instructions, because you just don't have the indemnity insurance at the smaller firms to be able to value assets of that larger lot size. So I think it probably is a reflection of the area of real estate that I've chosen to specialise in. Look, there's a lot to be said for the big firms and the level of support that is offered. I mean, at CBRE, the additional networks that we have here, everything from kind of the Ability Network, the Reach Network, we've got Women's Network, and the events that are put on are just outstanding. I went to a family network event the other day that was all about kind of supporting parents of teenagers and around internet safety. I just thought it's fantastic that I'm doing this kind of a lunchtime. The stuff provided is pretty fantastic.
And of course the APC. So these people, myself included, will be sitting it in the next 3 years, 4 years maybe. Obviously the support at the bigger firms is supposedly much stronger. Would you say that's another persuasive thing about going into these bigger companies?
Yeah, I think, and I think it's probably a bit unfair to do broad brush in terms of, this is all the big firms versus the smaller firms. I'm sure there's some smaller firms that do it fantastically. Excuse me. But with the larger firms, they are really geared up with the designated support that you're given as a graduate cohort. In terms of learning, development, and that setting up for sitting APC, in terms of additional sessions, in terms of giant booklets full of revision material and guidance. So I would say it's pretty unparalleled.
Okay.
And if you can get a job at one of the larger firms while you do your APC, I think it is a lot easier versus being at a smaller firm where I think you have to drive it a lot more yourself.
Okay. But we know it's tough. Getting these internships and grad schemes are very difficult. What would your advice be to the people that may have not secured one this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think see what you can get in terms of jobs and experiences. Don't rule anything out. It might be that you could go in-house in a real estate team working for another company and learn there. So I think, keep your options open. I think it's worth saying, I wouldn't have been accepted as a graduate at CBRE. I just wouldn't have made it through the process because I didn't have the A-level grades required to get through the various parameters that are set in place. And I appreciate those are set in place for a reason. They need to narrow down the number of applications because they receive thousands. So, But there's always the opportunity further down the line, as I've shown, to kind of come into these businesses. And I can guarantee I'm not alone in terms of particularly senior management here that wouldn't have necessarily been accepted on the standard graduate route.
So this is a question which I've asked a few people on the channel, and I probably will continue to ask this one. I call it the coffee chat. Okay, so a lot of grads and early careers, people were messaging seniors in the industry to go for a coffee to maybe learn a bit more about what they do and find out what's best for them. But a lot of them, including myself, don't know what to talk about at that coffee. Do you understand?
Yep, I understand.
So what do you think, firstly, what students should prep or how they should approach this senior person in the industry, and sort of what they can talk about to them during that coffee?
Okay. So and this might sound quite mean coming back, but if you're not sure what to ask during the coffee, then my question would be, why have you asked for a coffee in the first place? Is it because you feel like you should, or you are hoping something, or there's an expectation from the person you're meeting? And I think if you're going to ask somebody for a coffee, you need to be really targeted in terms of why you're doing that, what you want to learn from them, and therefore what questions you're going to ask them. So if there is a specific area that you're particularly interested in, or you've seen a specific transaction on the news, or you really want to learn about something, I would message and reach out to the individual in question. Be very clear from the outset in terms of why you're messaging them and what you're hoping to obtain from them in terms of information. So, what specifically you're interested in. And then if you're lucky enough that they agree to meet you, and what I would say is people have very little time. All right. So if they're able to give you 15, 20 minutes, then they're being generous in that respect, because it's really hard to find times in people's diaries. So make sure that you're prepped with questions that you're going to ask. These questions need to be specific. Don't make them open-ended, because you won't get the best from the conversation. And they will probably be frustrated that they have taken that time if they're incredibly open-ended questions.
Fine. So
that might sound quite mean and quite fierce, but it's important that time is respected for both individuals in that conversation. So yeah, be really targeted in your questions.
More about the valuation side of things. If you could pick 3 words why a grad should get into the valuations side of things, what would they be?
God, that's a challenging one. 3 words. Okay, right. I've never really thought about this before. It's varied. It is challenging, particularly challenging when you're dealing, and I would probably say it's engaging. So I would say kind of on that whole client engagement piece, we are speaking with clients daily. So in terms of relationships and trusted relationships, there's a lot of room in valuation to kind of have really good relationships, both on the investor side and the lending side. And I think probably a trend that we have seen over the last 5 years or so is lending. The valuer that's picked tends to be driven quite heavily by investor. So it's not just the lenders that we're having a relationship with, it really is those kind of investors and developers as well. So kind of real broad spectrum of individuals to kind of get to know and form relationships with. So yeah, engaging would probably be my last one.
Nice. And you've always been, or not always, but most of your time you've been in Student Accom, PBSA, BTR. What are the reasons for that? Why did you go down that route rather than just a classic commercial valuer?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I started my career as a commercial valuer, and it's kind of evolved and changed over time. I think it's quite nice to kind of reinvent every so often. there's always a concern with people that they feel somewhat pigeonholed into specific areas. And I think actually that's really nice in terms of valuation, that there is that opportunity to kind of make those sideways moves, because a lot of the skill set, you can move across. It's just upskilling into those certain sectors. And we've seen some kind of newer sectors come through. So single family housing, relatively new, nascent sector. Co-living, again, very nascent and new. So there's all these things coming on. We're seeing kind of, data centers be huge. Life sciences is now we've got our own valuation team covering just life sciences. Self-storage, you've got all these sectors, and a lot of them probably, weren't huge 20 years ago or so. So I think there's always that opportunity to change, and it's been quite nice to make those changes over time. What I like about Student and BTR, and I wasn't coming from a residential valuation background, it's quite transparent. So in terms of kind of getting that comparable evidence, actually I think our grads have it easy, because so much is available online, because rents are kind of publicly available, but also we have an incredible data insights team who garner lots of data around where rents have been, particularly from a dynamic pricing model across all the schemes in the UK. So we've got great data to base our valuations on. So actually, in terms of my job, it makes it a lot easier.
I can't believe I didn't ask this question at the very start of us filming, but why did you get into the industry?
I don't have kind of family or anything like that that are surveyors. I think if you asked me, when you were a child, what did you want to be? I think I always thought I wanted potentially to be an architect. I always liked real estate, but unfortunately don't have the creativity for architecture. My cousin's an architect, but yeah, I don't have the creativity. So actually, I think a careers advisor kind of talked to me about the opportunities for careers in terms of within that real estate space. Because I think as a child or a young person, I kind of always thought surveyors were, wearing a hard hat on a building site, a bit more kind of QS or building surveyor focused. I didn't quite appreciate, all of the other areas of surveying. So yeah, credit to that careers advisor for kind of talking me through those areas. But yeah, so I did a bit of research in that space and thought actually, that would really suit me. So yeah, that's how I got.
That's the reason.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. What about you?
I just sort of fell into it, I guess. I got my grades at college and they were better than I thought they were going to be. And a guy, so where I work, a guy came and sat at the bar, and he was at JLL, and he just spoke to me about what he does. I think he was a valuer, or he was in developments. It was one of those two. But I was really fascinated because I hadn't heard about it. I thought you could do the apprenticeship route of being a building surveyor and going down that side of things, and I thought that was it, or an estate agent. But yeah, I just sort of, he told me about Reading, and he said that was the uni to go to, and it's only 40 minutes away from my home, so I could still live at home. So I thought, why not? And I've loved it since. Like I just said, I thought the avenues that you could go down were minimal, but since studying it, obviously there's...
Yeah, and I think we've still got quite a way to go to kind of, improve the knowledge of what a surveyor is and does, particularly to people that don't necessarily have family members or friends in the space. Everyone knows what a lawyer does. Everyone knows what an accountant does. But I think, we've still got some work to do in terms of communication on that.
What can these people do this week that can get them one step closer to being in the industry?
Okay, right. So I'm out of the weeds of it at the moment, but in terms of kind of those internships, are they all closed? Is there still some open?
I think there's small ones here and there now.
Yeah, so I think if you haven't secured internships for the summer, now would be the ideal time. I'm assuming most have kind of finished or nearly finishing kind of the work for the year in terms of academia. So really focus on opportunities to kind of get some experience of any kind, some work experience. So I would reach out to companies, maybe think slightly left field. You could go and work, as I said, most large companies have their own, real estate arm of the business. So you could go and do some work experience there, potentially on kind of the more property management side or asset management side. Think outside the box, go to those smaller firms and see what you can get in terms of work experience across the summer.
And how would you expect a student to approach these firms? Would it be phoning head office or sending an email or letter in the bottle?
I think a phone call goes a long way. I think we're often now people are so focused on emailing. Pick up the phone. Phone call always goes down better. And also should help you locate who the right person is to contact in those businesses. Definitely pick up the phone. The other thing I would say is across the summer, again, if you're able to fit in between work experience, internships, is upskilling on your Excel if you're not already kind of very competent. That's definitely worthwhile doing. And I would also, and obviously you can use AI in, with your Excel. So just bear that in mind, but get familiar with it. And the other thing I would say is get your CV locked in, perhaps get some key answers to questions that you think would probably arise in application forms that you can tweak accordingly. Get them locked in, because it's coming in autumn that all of those applications are going to open, and you're going to want to do as many as you can. So as much work as you can put in now over the summer to prepare yourself so that it's an easier ride when you've got applications plus all your uni work. Will be worthwhile in the long run.
So what are some of the biggest mistakes which you see grads and early career people making at the start of their journey?
I think one of the biggest mistakes, and this is not necessarily on like a graduate's fault or an early careers person's fault, but I think it's really important to know to kind of manage upwards. So you'll quite often find that as a graduate or a junior resource in a team, is that lots of different people will ask you to do lots of different things. The worst thing that you can do is say yes, no problem to all of them, and then not deliver. It's really, really important that delivery happens. Deadlines are there for a reason, and if they're not hit, or as a director, if you're told they're not going to be hit at the 11th hour, it creates massive problems, because we can't manage that always from a client perspective, and we then have to resource it elsewhere, which becomes problematic. So really important to manage upwards. When people are instructing you or asking you to do tasks, ask them to outline, how urgent is this? And they'll all try and say sometimes ASAP or I want it yesterday. Really understand what the required deadlines are on it, and explain to them what else you have on. And if you really don't think that you're going to be able to hit those deadlines, is to be clear from the outset and let them know actually what is achievable, what is realistic. Now, you can't say no to everything, but I think just letting people know at the 11th hour that something isn't going to be completed is really problematic. So just keep those lines of communication open, and if you're not going to be able to deliver on something, like be clear from the outset that actually you don't have capacity.
Nice. And if a 20-year-old came to you today and they said that they want to work in the real estate industry as a whole, what would you tell them?
I'd say, crack on. Good for you. It's great. It's been a fabulous career for me. I've absolutely loved it. I've got 2 children, so I've been able to kind of be promoted whilst having children. In fact, one of my promotions was when I was off on mat leave. So, it's got the flexibility, to have a family. There's good career progressions. It's great meeting people and different people daily. And the work's really varied. So, I would say absolutely go for it. Would recommend it to anyone. You
said you're in the office, is it 3-4 days a week?
Yeah. Sorry, do you want to finish?
Yeah. Do you recommend grads or do you expect your grads in your team to be in the office 5 days a week?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I'm based at Henrietta House, which is a fabulous building with a lot of wonderful breakout space, but we don't have enough desks in the building for everyone to be in 5 days a week is the reality. So we tend to have anchor days where your team is encouraged to be in. So we all have 3 anchor days a week. You can definitely come in outside of those. You are encouraged to. So today is a Tuesday. It's not an anchor day of mine. I'm also in tomorrow. Also not an anchor day of mine. So there's flex in it. But it's just trying to make sure that you haven't got these huge peaks, kind of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then the office is dead Monday, Friday. There is, very much a level of flexibility in terms of from a graduate perspective. It's not an us and them. So it's not one rule for one and another for the graduates. But I would encourage the graduates in our team and those that are learning to try and be in as much as possible, because those conversations that you hear going on around the office, those engagements between peer on peer, just those chats around numbers, around assets, around how things work and queries are kind of invaluable to kind of hear. And I think if you are remote too much, then it will hamper your progress.